Excellent. Perfect.
Thanks,
Much
Marcy.
better. Oh, sure. Thanks everyone for your help. Okay, so I'm recording the session. We're going to do that for folks who maybe couldn't join us today, or assuming that the recording works well, I can share it out with you all again if you'd like to view it again another time. Thanks for joining. We have a good solid group of somewhere between 10 and 15 of you all here today. Please speak up if you have questions as we go. There are a number of different topics and many different directions that we could go with this topic. A lot of the classes that we run at TMA, emerging leaders and tools for frontline leaders, and then there's even some other classes that are more specific, dig into the concept of conflict and how teams work together effectively. So if you have questions about classes that could help take this further, let me know, or let Nahali know, or Lee know. Happy to talk about that with any of you. But today we wanted to jump right in and talk about a couple topics that we can cover while we're together. Managing conflict is often the most challenging aspect of working with other people. But the workplace really does require healthy dialogue and debate in order for employees, so all of you, right, all of us, and the company to grow and improve and get better. So we really want to talk today a little bit about how to recognize constructive conflict that is helpful, and destructive conflict that makes an organization or relationships worse. Identifying 5 methods of how to deal with conflict, and talking a little bit about conflict management styles that you can practice. And if you join certain classes, we do assessments, and frankly can do the assessments outside of a class with individuals or groups, if that's of interest as well, to understand your personal conflict management style. And then in the framework of what we're going to talk about today, help you personally understand how to respond to conflict, adjust your own behavior to meet somebody where they're at, and ideally convert difficult situations into more successful outcomes. Okay. So conflict in general is a situation where you and someone else or others have different desires or different goals, or your concerns are different from that of the people you work with. You may have different points of view, just feel differently about something. You may have the same view, but talk about it differently. You might be communicating differently. Sometimes conflict happens because you're spending a lot of time with people. I know during the pandemic, a lot of people were home spending time together, and conflict can rise there when there are more people at home more often. But that happens at work as well. When you spend half of your day and most of your waking day with your colleagues, you spend a lot of time together, and that can cause conflict sometimes. When you need each other to get your work done or to be successful, conflict can often arise in those situations as well. And then there's another piece around communication that tends to lead to conflict. If expectations are known to someone, but not to all, or they're not communicated well, or they're communicated but not met, there can be conflict in those situations too. And then, of course, sometimes people just don't get along, and it's part of who they are, and they just don't seem to connect, and that's real, and it can cause conflict as well. Maybe there are other reasons that conflict can arise, but those are reasons why what you care about might be different than what somebody else cares about, and can all result in conflict. So how do you know when you have conflict at work? Anybody have any idea what that looks like in a work environment? Any ideas? Go ahead, throw a couple out if you've got some. What does it look like when you have conflict? You guys didn't know it was going to be interactive, huh?
There's kind of like
you can feel tension in a room, maybe a little less dialogue or real, sharing of ideas, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Tension in the room. You might feel it. It might feel thick and heavy and harder.
Not much
Yeah,
eye.
Karen's adding that raised voices, tension. Absolutely. I have the chat window open today too, if that's easier for you guys. So some of the things you might see, of course, you might feel it, right? People are talking in loud voices. You might see faces that are unhappy. You might look at people's body language and know they don't want to spend time together. And you get that at a personal level. But you'd also see some things in the business. Results are poor and accountability is lacking, and there's finger pointing. So you may see that a team collectively can't deliver quality product or productivity slows down. You might see that more people, customers or employees, are complaining about things not being done right. Work might not be delivered well. People might be cutting corners. People might be avoiding working together. So you might see some complaints about things not getting done well. People will often blame other people for why there are problems. And oftentimes people attack ideas before they're even fully expressed. So that might mean that I suggest something and before anybody's even fully heard me out, somebody who is unhappy with me for some other reason or we're in conflict might attack my thoughts before I'm even fully expressed about what I think or believe. People work around each other and avoid each other, and then people withhold resources. Resources can be time, money, tools, whatever it looks like that you need to get your work done. It can be challenging to get work done if you don't have the resources you need. And of course, here's the one you all talked about, tension in the air. You just sort of feel it, right? And things fall through the cracks. Work doesn't get done, pieces get missed. Nobody really wants to step up and own it. People avoid it. They don't want to have the conflict, whatever that might look like. So things fall through the cracks and don't get done. And then last, you get a lot of excuses instead of people looking for solutions to solve the problems or whatever's ahead of you. I assume that many of you have seen these kinds of things at work, or you've been part of a team where things like this have happened. And that may be why you're here today. But again, jump in if you guys have thoughts as we go. So managing conflict is definitely the most challenging piece of working with people. You know, some people say my way or the highway. You do it my way, and that's the way it goes. But honestly, healthy dialogue and conversation and debate in a workplace is necessary so that employees and companies can grow and improve. Companies that are willing and people that are willing to invest in dialogue and healthy debate, healthy being the operative word, right? Healthy debate helps the company make better products, do things more efficiently, improve process, meet customer expectations faster and better. So the trick really is it healthy or is it not healthy? And so when you think about conflict, there's really two kinds. There's constructive conflict and destructive. Constructive is healthy. It results in mutual success. So both sides feel successful. They feel like they've won something, if not everything they wanted, at least they're satisfied in the outcome. Destructive conflict are those that are one-sided or both people fail and don't get what they want. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but a one-sided destructive conflict can be, the argument where somebody says, it's because I said so, just do it. The other side definitely feels told and disengaged, and it's one-sided. Or mutual failure is when, for example, somebody says, so we'll just agree to disagree, and everybody walks away, and it doesn't help move the needle forward or make change. So there's more in our classes as we dig in and have more time together about each of these 5 methods of resolving conflict. And there's some books and some good thinkers and leaders that we talk about in these classes that would give you a little bit more information. But at a very high level, there are 5 methods generally accepted as conflict resolution approaches. And so we wanted to talk just a little bit about that today and share some basics. What's important about these is all 5 can be effective and all 5 have a purpose. There's no one best way to resolve conflict. People will generally gravitate towards 1 or 2 of these, and I will ask you guys which ones you gravitate to. And then I'm going to ask you also, when I say gravitate to, which ones you think are best, because people do perceive there is a best way to solve problems. And then I'm going to ask you guys to think about, based on what you've heard, can you make a guess on where you think you are among these 5? Which one of the methods do you generally use? And you may have different styles that you use at home and at work. I definitely do. And I'll share that a bit later as we get into this a little more. So the 5 methods for resolving conflict: competing. It's exactly what it sounds like. Both people want to win, and they will compete until there is a winner and a loser. Collaborating, right? People work together. Compromising. People get to something that works for both. Avoiding, just ignoring it and avoiding it completely, not having the conflict. And then accommodating. Accommodating is where you sort of give in and let the other person win. And again, there's no best way, and all people need to know how to use multiple modes of conflict management, because especially as you become a team leader or a manager, or if you are already, your job is to coach and advise the team on how to work through conflict. It's not to solve everybody's problems. That often becomes the job of the leader because the team is not effective at working together to have healthy conflict. So the competing method is definitely one where there's unilateral decision making. One person makes the decision, and it's generally used for situations that need quick action, instances where there's no compromise or debate, or making an unpopular decision. So some examples of this are when a business owner decides that the business is no longer profitable and he can't keep running the business, he makes a decision that he's closing the business and he tells everyone. It is competitive because somebody wins, he closes the business and does what he wants, and others lose. And there's no compromise, there's no other discussion about it. It is sometimes the right approach because there is no other option. And so that could be the third point here, unpopular decision, but perhaps the right decision. Some of the other ones are around safety. We, in a manufacturing setting, safety is so important for people and for the business that there is typically one way to do things right when it comes to safety, and it's a non-negotiable. And so that could be something where there's no compromise or debate. It has to be done the way it has to be done. And then situations that resolve quick action. Let's say there is a hazardous material spill or there's a fire. We don't stand around and talk about what to do about it. We very quickly make sure everybody's safe, and the leader kicks in, or the safety lead kicks into full gear and makes sure that a decision is made to protect the people in the company. So those are examples of competing behaviors that are all logical and healthy ways to see competing show up at work. Collaborative method. Collaborative is more about gaining support from the team, sharing perspective, and having good relationships. People want to work together, and they want to kick around ideas and solve problems together and put their hands on things, molds or products or things that aren't working, and try to work together to collaborate and solve an outcome. It's really helpful when everybody wants to find the right solution. So this is often used, as you can imagine, when you want a team to be bought into or agree with where you're going to end up. When all the perspectives that the team brings are helpful for you to teach the rest of the group or share information with the rest of the group. So, for example, in my home life, I think of, I know my outcome is cleaning our house on Saturday, but there's so many things that we could clean on Saturday. I just need my kids and my husband to help a little bit. And so we can all talk and collaborate on how we want to accomplish the outcome and get the goal done, but we can all have a voice, and maybe somebody thinks one thing is more important, and we can all learn what everybody believes are the right things to get done. And maybe somebody thinks about something that we hadn't even thought about before. So that would be an example of home life collaborating. Collaborating is also useful when you're trying to improve relationships or working with someone new, you don't really know how they work. You know that the relationship is important to you long term. It's the colleague who works next to you, or you share a desk space or an office space, or you need the customer interaction to make the work product, the right thing at the end, make it meet spec. So the collaborating style is important to understand and be able to use when the relationship is important to maintain. Compromising method. This is, generally used when you want to resolve an issue that's important, that you need to have commitment on both sides, but there may not be equal power, right? And somebody is trying to assert themselves maybe a little more than they actually have the power to do. Or it's when you have a peer group where everybody weighs in equally, but nobody can get everything that they need out of it and allow others to win as well. So compromising is a little bit of like win a little, lose a little. We can all compromise on something, and we can all get a little bit of the outcome that we were after. So it's predominantly used for resolving issues of moderate to high importance. So things that are pretty important, we need to move forward on something. And so we compromise, even if it's not perfect, it's better than nothing. You might hear that in those situations. And, you have people at the table who either have equal power or are willing to share power because it's important and it's necessary to move things forward, and gets you commitment on both sides of the table or both parties to move forward. Sometimes you need to make a compromise to have a temporary fix and just move things forward. And that can take you back then to some other brainstorming on problem solving, and conflict management. But in the compromising method, you at least can move forward with something that gets you closer. 80% is better than nothing, right? And sometimes compromising is used to back up a decision that's been made by competing or collaborating. So sometimes decisions get made in a competitive way or in a collaborative way, and you need to come back at those decisions because they aren't producing the right outcome, or the relationships have soured, or whatever it might be, and then compromising is really where you land. So they may have tried a different style, but then gotten to a point where compromising was the right actual answer. Okay, the fourth one is the avoiding method. Avoiding is when the topic, it can be successful, for sure, when the topic is unimportant at work. Somebody might come in, so a common one in Chicago, Cubs versus Sox, right? People have real strong opinions. Neither one's right or wrong, technically, depending on where you live. Maybe there's a right and wrong answer, but really, it's not an important argument, and to get into a conflict about it at work, a true conflict, not just a silly one, where you're ribbing each other a bit, but a serious conflict. There's no need for that, and certainly no need for that at work. So it's unimportant to work. You can avoid the topic completely by just choosing to walk away and not make a decision, because it just doesn't matter, right? Definitely things that come to work that are not work related and are not necessary to resolve for work and for your employer, avoiding is a fair answer. If you have to get to an answer for your employer or your customer, avoiding is probably not the right choice. So avoiding is often used for, like I said, unimportant or non-work related issues, buying time until a resolution can be reached. So you may need to say, you know what, let me step away and think about that for a minute. Can we talk about it later? That's actually avoiding. But again, it's not a bad thing. It's allowing you time to think and come back at it in a way that you can use the conflict in a more positive way and get to a shared outcome. Sometimes avoiding is good for recognizing issues as symptoms. So by that, I mean the fact that, 50 parts just came off a line and none of them, they're all defects. They all have defects. None of them are to spec. That's an issue that you have to resolve and what you will have conflict about, but it's actually a symptom of the root cause, which is somebody didn't do the setup right, or somebody put the wrong plastic in the machine, or whatever it might be. So sometimes dealing with the bad part can be avoided while you're off actually working on the real issue and the root cause. So that's a time when you might use avoiding as well. Okay, the last one, accommodating. So accommodating is when somebody says, okay, this is a really important topic for the other person. I think I can accommodate what they're asking for with very little loss to myself. So I'm going to let them have the win. And it's willing, you're more willing, and it's better to let something go to keep peace than it is to actually win in the conflict. So some ways that this is actually used to help maintain perspective in a conflict situation. But sometimes it's just not that important, and you can maintain perspective and step back and say, okay, you can have this one, not as important to me. The other one is around, making an active decision to let it go. Sometimes you just say, all right, good enough. And I apologize if you get some background noise. I've got some workers in the background behind me here. But sometimes you just let something go when it's just not important to have the argument. And then keeping the peace and creating goodwill. So very often somebody will decide to accommodate someone else because it's much more important for you, the person who's choosing to accommodate, to maintain the relationship and make the other person feel better, or to create peace. An example of this in personal life, my mother would like to spend every night with us for dinner. And I can't say yes every night. But once every 2 weeks, I accommodate and I say, okay, Mom, let's get together. Because it's more important for me to create goodwill, for her to feel good, and to have peace in the family than it is for me to say, you know what, you're really intruding on what we do in our house at night, and I know you want to be a part of it. It's a harder conversation, and it's just not worth it. Those things can happen at work too. So you can think about opportunities to accommodate and sort of give in a little bit or let something go. Those are all examples of accommodating. Okay, so I'm going to pause there and ask you guys to sort of think of two things. And I am going to ask you either to throw it in the chat or come off mute and let me know what you think. But, what do you guys think of those 5 styles? Collaborating, compromising, avoiding, accommodating, and I always forget one, right? Let's go back and look at it. Competing. So of the 5, do you have one that you think you most typically use? I definitely do. I'm a competitor. My natural instinct is to win. And I thank my dad for raising an athlete and a competitive kid, but it shows up at work for me too. So I have to be really careful to practice the other 4 styles so I don't run over people at work, because I can. And so I work really hard on practicing the other 4 and avoid things that are unnecessary to argue about or have conflict about. I accommodate where I think the other person is more passionate and it's less a big deal to me. And then where I really feel strongly about something and we need to make a decision, I look to collaborate first and then compromise if we can't truly collaborate and get to a win-win. Then at least compromise is win a little, lose a little, but it's good enough for both of us. So do you guys have a natural style? Karen, I know you've been on other webinars. I'm going to call on you if you're there. Do you have a natural style that you think you normally go to? Yeah, we've got another same for competing. Yeah. Karen is more compromise. Okay. Anyone else want to share?
Marcy, I would say, with staff, I'm probably more collaborator, but when I'm talking to TMA members, I'm definitely more accommodating.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Len uses a blend depending on the situation. That's great. Yeah. So Lee and Len, I mean, you're exactly where this concept goes, right? Recognizing that your styles are a little different depending on the needs. With members, we want to be very accommodating as much as we can. We're here to serve, and that's absolutely right. But at the same time, when you're working inside with your work group that you see every day, you spend a lot of time with, and you all have different opinions, sometimes, collaborate or compromise is where you need to land. And that's okay, and that's good. And it's good to recognize that you use different aspects of conflict management modes. Len, same thing. Sometimes it's really important to win and to get the right decision made for safety or because we have to. It's the right hard decision. And other times it's more important to just simply avoid or compromise or bring the group together and collaborate and talk about what the right outcome is. So please, Len, you want to make a comment?
Yes, I do. I think there's a overarching layer here called communications that's really important, because if, for example, you choose the competing method, it's very important for those around you to understand what drives your decision so that they may be able to contribute and collaborate with you in the future, or at the very least, understand, if you are the team leader, why you made the decision you made so they can get behind it. They may not agree with it, but they could get behind you.
Oh, great. 100%, great point. Part of when we talk about conflict management in classes, when we have more time together, we spend a lot of time on communication and your vision and your why and how you set goals, getting people on board and getting them aligned. Even if you have to make a tough decision, communicating about why, sometimes people go, okay, I hate it, but I can support it. I was in that situation yesterday with the volunteer role I had. Didn't like the decision, but I'll support it because it's the right thing to do long term. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else want to comment there? Anyone have a preference on which one they think is the best one for work? Is there one? And Carrie's adding, it's a great point. She would say she's compromising, but often has to make tough decisions and explain. Carrie, speak up, and often make tough decisions and explain reasoning. So more competitive. Yeah. Yeah, and Karen's in the chat. She agrees with Len. It does depend on the situation. Agree. And that's really the whole point of getting this conversation started around conflict management and your style. Which one is the best one, right? And for the situation. And then which one is your preferred mode? And can you flex and can you practice the other modes? Some people are very successful at that. Other people are definitely not. And so the intent here is to A, let people know that there are different styles, and B, to ask people to be intentional about practicing them and recognizing the right time to practice them, and C, sort of learning as you go, because it's not easy, for example, for me to accommodate. That's a hard one. I can avoid, but it doesn't get us anywhere. So I work really hard on practicing accommodation where I can, because I'm usually so strong and competitive that people, my family, for example, thinks I win a lot. I win the arguments. Well, maybe. So I try to accommodate where I can and try not to let competing show up all the time. And at work, definitely I try to be more collaborative. Definitely. Because I've got a team of people that work with me that I rely on every day to get work done and serve the TMA membership and other clients that we work with. And you all have similar situations, whatever that looks like. Yeah. Great. Okay. So what I wanted to share with you then is a framework that relies on those definitions, but then takes it one step further. And if you were to join us for a class, we talk more about this in great depth and do some exercises and practice on it. But when you think about each of those conflict management styles, the 5 we just talked about, each of them has a typical behavior, and each of them has a mindset or how you think about things that goes with it. So I want to show those to you really quick. So they end up in a box, in a 9 box, so a 3 by 3 box. On the left-hand side is a scale of assertiveness. So how assertive are you? The extent to which you try to satisfy your own concerns. High assertive, low assertive. And then across the bottom, cooperativeness. So I'm very cooperative over here on the right, or I'm very uncooperative on the left. And how much you attempt to satisfy other people's concerns. Those are really the 2 dimensions, and the 5 behaviors get planted inside of these dimensions. So anyone have any idea where conflict probably goes? High assertive, low assertive, uncooperative, highly cooperative?
High assertive, low cooperative.
Yeah, high assertive, low cooperative. It's exactly right. Collaborating would be on the far right. So high cooperative, high assertive. And that's because you're really going to have to work hard and assert your opinions, but you're also going to have to work really hard at cooperating and understanding where the other person is or the group is. In the center is compromising. So that is moderate on both assertiveness and cooperativeness. And then of course, low assertiveness and low cooperativeness is avoiding. And then accommodating is very cooperative, right? But low assertive. Now, those are the styles. With each style comes a behavior. The behavior that goes with competing is what we call forcing. You're forcing your own agenda. You're forcing your thinking on others. When you're collaborating, you're problem solving. You're working through things. You're talking about things. You're thinking about things. You're trying to really, truly solve a problem and work together to do that. And it takes a lot of energy and effort to get there, usually. Compromising is what we call bargaining. I'll take this and you can have that. I think of it like a Monopoly game, right? I really want to, if anyone plays Monopoly, I really want to own Park Place and Boardwalk. So I'm going to bargain to get those pieces on the game board. I'll give you these 2 if you give me that 1, because that 1 brings me great value and those 2 give you some value. So what do you think? But that bargaining can happen at work also. If you have to share a machine, if you have to negotiate on when to meet a client deadline, if you have to decide which project gets done first, which one is priority, those are all opportunities to compromise and then to bargain, right? as a behavior. Withdrawing is the behavior that goes with avoiding. Withdrawing is just stepping back and saying, I'm out, and walking away. Accommodating is what we call soothing or smoothing. You might hear it or see it done or said both ways. That's really where you say, okay, it's all right. I understand. Really important to you. We will do it your way. You're soothing, you're calming, or you're smoothing, right? And leveling things out. So pretty straightforward, but once you have this framework, then you can really think about where am I with each person I'm talking with and working with. So the mindset, how you think when you're competing, is win-lose. I will win, you will lose, right? Collaborating is win-win. We work really hard to get to a solution that maybe is different than was my original or your original solution, but it's the right solution, and together we're both going to win. And that's the mindset that goes with collaborating. With compromising, it's win a little and lose a little. So like I said, we can compromise on a board game where you're trading something. I'd like to have this, but I'll give up that. A lot of the times, there's a lot of compromise at work. People tend to think collaborate and compromise are the two best ways to solve conflict. And remember, there's no best way, but those are the two that people tend to pick. They perceive them as the best ways. With avoiding and the withdrawing behavior, lose-lose. When you don't address a conflict, nobody wins, right? So everybody loses there, and it's just hanging in the air. And then for accommodating, you lose-win. So as a person, I lose, but I let the other person win, and I gave in. And that was a choice that I made, and intentional. Anyone have comments on that or the framework? It may seem pretty straightforward when you look at it this way, but when you actually put it into practice and you think about how you're behaving or what choices you're going to make, it can be more challenging to sort of recall and remember. So if there's one sheet of paper that I would print out of the webinar, it's this page that helps you remember sort of how you want to show up: high assertive, low assertive, high cooperative, low, and then which style you want to pick and where you want to be. Any thoughts on any of this? Okay, so let's just take a couple minutes. I want to talk about the manager's role in conflict. Just a couple slides here, and then we can wrap up and do any Q&A. The most important thing for a manager is to know if your team, your work team that you manage or lead, is conflict competent. What we mean by that is, do they fight fair? Do they know how to have conflict? Are they all conflict averse? Well, that's not, if everyone's going to avoid, they're not conflict competent. If they're all feisty and fight all the time, that's not conflict competent either. So what you're looking for there as a lead, supervisor, manager is a team of people with open minds, people that have agreed how to have conflict. They've set ground rules. Guys, when we disagree about something, let's take it off the floor. Let's go step aside, or let's go take a walk, or let's go have lunch together and work through it. And then we'll come back and apply it. Whatever the rules are for conflict, in my house, we don't have conflict when we're mad. We walk away and we come back when we have calm tempers. I got a couple teenagers. So we have that rule in our house. But work rules, house rules, all of this can apply in both settings. So do you have ground rules? Is there commitment to listening? Does everyone on the team demonstrate that they're willing to listen? If somebody's too bullheaded or too hard-headed to listen, you probably are not fully conflict competent yet as a team. You may have some people who are, but your team as a whole may not be. Focusing on solutions and commitment to agreements. So if you've got people who really want to get to the right answer, even if it's not their answer, that will help build a conflict competent team. And then even where you disagree as a team, if you can support the final decision of the group and be healthy about it, not passive aggressive and truly toe the line, then that is a commitment to an agreement that the team made, even if you disagree. That happened yesterday. I work on a board. I do some volunteer work, and the president of the board made a decision that I didn't agree with. And we hashed it out. We really tried to collaborate and understand each other. And ultimately, we landed, I think, on compromise because he insisted on something he was forcing. But I talked him through a point where I said, I'll go with you on what you want to do, but I need 3 things. And if you can commit to these 3 things, then we can move forward. He did, and I did. So we went from competitive, where it was going to be win-lose, to collaborate. And we didn't quite get to win-win, but we got to win a little, lose a little. And so it can show up in any aspect of life. And I'm sure you can think of situations outside of work where that's happened too. But part of what I've done with that board, candidly, is bring in, my knowledge of conflict management and expressed to the group when we work together, the team, that regardless of what we say as a team, when we go out of the room and the meeting's over, we support the decision publicly and privately. We don't talk about it behind people's backs. We're not passive aggressive. We don't come back and try to fight about it later. We get it resolved, and then we agree to support. And so it's an active decision on how we want to manage conflict. And that's part of our ground rules that we set as a board. So you can definitely do that with a work team, and you can do that with a home team. So 6 steps to resolving conflict. If you have to lead a team through conflict resolution, there are actual sort of steps to go through. There's a science behind it and getting to the right outcome, sort of the fastest way and healthiest way. The first thing to do is to understand what you're arguing about. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had, in my career where we're not even sure what we're arguing about because we've gone to 15 different topics. So to really say, let's talk about X. Are we talking about serving our customer needs? Okay, what is their need? Is it timeliness? Is it quality? Is it cost? Is it all 3? Okay, let's focus on that and let's get it done. Let's figure out what we're arguing about. We're arguing about timeliness. Let's talk about timeliness. How do we get there? And then you work through the process. But establishing the common goal, meeting the customer's timeliness request, and then discussing ways to meet that goal. How can we accelerate work? Should we run some overtime? Should we ask the second shift to work on it overnight? Are there some other ideas, ways to meet the common goal? That's number 3. What are the barriers? We don't run a second shift. Nobody can work overtime. It's a holiday. What are the barriers we have to work around? Make sure that they're known to the team so that doesn't cause you to stumble later. And then agreeing on the best way to resolve the conflict. It's important to know which style of conflict management you're taking and talk to the team about what you're trying to do. Guys, let's collaborate. Let's really get to a win-win on this and figure out the right answer. Or guys, we're going to have some people compromise. We're not going to all get what we want out of this, but the customer has to get what they need. So maybe that's actually forcing, depends, right? But know what your approach to resolving the conflict is going to be, and then work that process. And then lastly, acknowledging the solution and determining who does what to achieve the solution. So often people agree on what the solution is, but they don't say, hey, Katie, hey, Carrie, hey, Len, can you help me do these pieces in this time frame so we can get it done? And often the solution is identified and people go, great, we're done. But they don't actually think about following through. Does that make sense, folks? Okay. Anyone who's involved, thanks, Len. Anyone who's involved in that conflict about the quality and timeliness and cost of a part for a client, everyone needs to be involved in the resolution process. Otherwise, you probably still have somebody who's going to think there's a conflict or wants to argue about it or wants to voice an opinion. So it's really important that part of the ground rules be, or the common, the common way that you solve conflict when you come together is to say we all come together. We don't start without Joe, or we don't start without Mary, right? We bring everyone together. Okay, so the manager really can play 3 roles in resolving conflict. You can be coach, you can be a role model, and you can be a resource. So how do those things look differently? A coach is somebody who helps a team know that there's conflict, identify the root causes, and gives them ideas on how to solve it. So somebody who stands on the sidelines and helps them understand themselves and how different the members of the team are, and that there's different approaches to managing conflict. Is there a comment? Okay, jump in if you'd like. And also a coach can help people practice how they manage conflict. So if you think about a coach on a soccer field or a football field or a hockey field or whatever it is, a coach helps somebody practice. They do practice and they do drills so they know how to be better at it when they really have to do it. Same sort of scenario. The manager is role model. That's really about how do you show the behavior that you need to show so others can follow. And how do you role model what you want? And so some of the ways that you can do that as a role model, really make sure that you practice all 5 types of problem solving or conflict resolution, but really work hard at win-win solutions. Work really hard at collaborate. Those are the ones where everybody leaves feeling as good as they can about a conflict, win-win. So you want to model that as much as you can, but model all 5 and talk about when you're using other approaches, because that's great and people learn from that, teams learn from that. And then the last piece is really around supplying resources, and it says don't rescue, and that's intentional. Some managers fly in and see conflict and go, okay, I'll just fix this, and then they make a decision which is forcing. And that's really not what the team needs. What they need is accountability and responsibility to solve their own problems. It will make them healthier and trust each other more if they can work through conflict in a healthy way and get to solutions that help the whole. So you can supply them with support and ideas, as long as you're not saying, well, I think the best idea is, to be able to say, well, there are 3 or 4 different options. Which ones do you think we should consider? There's a different way of talking when you're supplying ideas and being a resource rather than actually trying to solve for them. How does that sit for everybody? Questions on that or thoughts? Okay. So successful people leaders, this is really our last slide, and then I want to open it up for any comments or questions for a couple of minutes. Successful people leaders do a couple things. They're self-aware. They understand themselves and they know that their behavior affects other people, and they understand the choices they make and understand that their behavior can damage or improve relationships. They understand their reactions to other people. They know when they're bristling and they're getting upset about something and they're in a competitive relationship and they might be about to lose. They're aware of that and they understand their reactions. And that's true in any situation. If they're avoiding, they know they're avoiding. They know how to change their behavior and do things differently to meet people where they're at. Different situations and different people call for different things. So different behaviors, different styles, different mindsets, and they know how to change and practice those and use them. And successful people leaders are adept. They're capable at using constructive conflict to generate new ways of working, improve the business, improve process, create new ideas, and innovate for the business. Healthy conflict, constructive conflict actually There is science behind a correlation that healthy conflict can drive and does drive innovation in companies. People that are constantly challenging and thinking about what ifs and how could we make it better and collaborating to that outcome, getting to win-win, all the ideas and the concepts that come up along as part of that improve the business and make them more successful. And of course, it helps an individual grow too. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. We've got about 5 minutes left. What questions do you all have or comments on any of this? Does this give you a sense for something? Did you learn something new today? Or is this reinforcing or any perception on any of that? Thank you. I got a yes. That's good. Do you want to elaborate on anything that was particularly helpful or you will take away and maybe apply or think about differently? And Karen's adding something in the chat. Feel free to come off mute if you guys would like and talk as well. Chat's also fine. Karen, thank you.
The only thing I found is, I mean, not the only thing, but what I want to mention is that those situations were happening that you were describing, and now I know how to name them and how to identify them.
Yes. Yeah, use the one sheet with the behaviors, mindsets, and styles as your guide. And when you have a name for it, you can work on it. Absolutely. And you can identify it. Good. Yeah, I think that's the main takeaway. Okay. If anyone else has comments, I'm around. Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you to the group. Thank you for being here. My contact information is on the screen. Feel free to reach out. We have.
Hey, Marcy.
Yes.
So I have one quick question. I don't know if you have an answer for it, but how do you get past people who you're trying to work with them on conflict resolution, but they just don't want to participate. They don't want to be part of the solution. They don't even want to be there. I mean, how do you kind of move them through that to be more participative, I guess?
There's thanks, Len. Bye. Yeah, there's some very interesting aspects around psychology at work. One of the things that I have included in some other classes and we've talked about are people, the way your brain actually works and your brain chemistry works. And I'm no doctor, but I know enough about this to get in trouble, right? The way it actually works is when people have emotion, they're angry, they're happy, they're scared, they're sad, they're fearful, they're vehemently in disagreement about something. When they have emotion about something, they can't move to think about logic. So there's an emotional side of your brain and a logical side of your brain. And if somebody is just digging their feet in and saying, absolutely not, I refuse on principle, or I just won't, or this is crazy, there's emotion there. So I don't ever try to talk about logic. I set aside the logic, the problem solving for later, and actually have a personal conversation about, hey, Karen, tell me what's going on. You seem really frustrated. You don't want to engage. Is it me? Is it the team? What's going on that's got you so upset that you don't want to participate? I'd like to help fix that. And so sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get people who just avoid and are just unwilling. It's very challenging, but I think starting with the human behavior and the psychology of it is where I go. I can think of a dozen examples, but my favorite is my teenage daughter. She's very emotional and sensitive about certain things. And when I ask for help on something, there's an immediate shutdown and departure. And I can't even get her to talk about it. And so I let her go and I go back later and I find her when she's calmed down. Emma, what's going on? Why such an overreaction? Or why wouldn't you have that conversation? Help me understand so I can fix it because I want to support you and we need your opinion. So it's an invitation to come back in with an element of support that's about them being heard. 9 times out of 10, they feel unheard or undervalued or they feel like they lose in those situations. And so why bother? But I don't know if that helps at all, but that's how I would approach it and how I'd advise people to try it. Might take a couple cracks at somebody.
Okay.
The other thing, Karen, that I've done is I've used this language with people. I had somebody a couple weeks ago in a dialogue where it could have been very contentious and we had conflict we had to resolve. And we really didn't have trust between us yet. I trusted all the colleagues in the team except the person. And he didn't trust me, I don't think, right? And so I named it. I was actually teaching a class and I named it. And so it was present with me. And so I named it and I said, look, we can agree to disagree and walk away and avoid this. Or we can lean into this and have a really healthy discussion. I'm not going to hold a grudge. I want you to hear from me. If you won't hold a grudge, I'll hear from you, and let's be honest and let's try to figure out a solution that works for both of us. But you can win and I can lose, or I can win and you can lose, but that's not healthy for us. What's healthy is that we both get somewhere. So let's talk about it and be open. And that's why high assertive, high cooperative is in that top right corner. You have to be really assertive to get to collaborate and use your master negotiating skills to get somebody willing to participate. And they're usually down in that avoid, right? Avoid space. So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but if you want to talk separately about situations, I can try to give you some other advice, but that's usually the couple ways I think about it or have worked through it.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fine. You answered my question. I appreciate that. Just looking at that individual person first and their attitude and their behaviors and trying to kind of move through those before you bring them in with the whole group. And because honestly, they'll taint the group too, is what I've found.
100%. Yeah. Who are they at their core? How do they feel? How are they behaving? How do they think? What do they want out of that? How can you support them? Those kinds of things would all be valuable. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Sure. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. Thank you guys all for being here. Everybody's on mute, so I'm hoping I'm not talking over someone else who wants to talk. But thank you all for being here. I look forward to having you guys either in class or if you've got team members that you think would value this class, feel free to send them. Talk to Lee, Naheli, myself. We also can bring these concepts on site to your company. If you have a whole team of people and you want to work on conflict management strategies with a team and help a team get better, we can do that as well. So just reach out, let us know. We'll look forward to talking with you all in the future. Thanks all. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Marcy.
Of course. Take care.